Hello. In this latest edition of Wines That Nobody Cares About Very Much, I thought I would introduce both of my followers who are paying attention to my Elektron orange wine or amber wine. And you may or may not have picked up that earlier this week I was interviewed by two good mates of mine on their podcast. So Lee Isaacs and Fergus Elias interviewed me on their podcast, The Maker and the Merchant, which was very kind of them. And they spoke about this wine. Fergus had bought it and tasted it. And on account of the fact that maybe both of their followers and viewers were a little bit curious about it, I thought I'd tell you a little bit about the wine. So here it is. Kind of punchy branding to match a punchy wine. It's an orange wine or amber wine, and I thought I'd say a little bit about what that is, because conceivably some of you may not know. So for the rest of you, forgive me if I'm about to take you down a tour down the blindingly obvious. But an orange wine is a wine that's been made with white grapes, but using the red winemaking technique. So normally, and there is some variation of this, but normally when you're making a white wine, you would press the grapes, you take the juice away from the skins, and then you'd ferment that juice and you'd make it into a white wine. And with a red wine, you typically press the grapes, leave it in contact with the juice and the skin, and you would ferment it all together, and that would make a red wine. What an orange wine does is you crush or press white grapes, leave them in contact with the skin, and allow them to ferment together. And then the matter of how long you leave that skin in contact determines the character of the wine. So you can go all the way through from just a few hours of skin contact, and that's why I say there's some blurring of the edges, because there's some well-established white winemakers who for generations and generations have introduced a little bit of skin contact into their winemaking just to add a little bit of texture, and they wouldn't really consider that to be an orange wine, and rightly so. So you can go from a few hours through to a few months, or in the case of ancient Georgian wines dating back sort of some 8,000 years, it can be many, many months, so 6 months plus, that you would leave the skins in contact with the juice. And all of that will determine the end outcome of the wine. So the longer you leave it in contact, typically you'll get more extraction, you'll get more of the kind of tannins that you might typically associate with a red wine. So broad spectrum with orange wines, you can't really kind of categorize them all together. The reason I refer to it either as an orange wine or an amber wine is that historically in Georgian heritage they would refer to it as an amber wine. So I like to kind of give a nod to that heritage, given that that's where skin contact winemaking has its origins. But the term that's become more generally used is orange wine, and I guess sometimes you can see why when you look at the colour of the wine. So Elektron is no exception. So this has been made with Solaris grapes, a peewee variety, disease-resistant peewee variety that those of you who've been watching will know that I made a pet nat with that. Fizzy Bum Bum was made with Solaris grapes last year. My Supernova white wine that I've talked about here before, that was also made with Solaris grapes, and so this is the third style of wine that I made from the same batch of grapes. And I left the skins in contact for 4 weeks, which is pretty punchy by most standards. So what should you expect from this wine? Well, you may have heard Fergus talking about it. I make no bones about it. This is a divisive style of wine. If you've never tried an orange wine before, this is probably not the one for you to start on. So you need to be thinking in terms of something that is definitely destined to be a food wine. So I made this with plenty of skin contact, and then when I pressed it off, I put it back into my little kind of clay fermentation egg that you've heard me talk about before, and I left it there to age, and I left it with some airspace in the tank, which normally in winemaking is a no-no, but I was aiming for an oxidative style, which is a word I often stumble with, to give it a little bit of kind of oxidative character into the wine. So you need to think in terms of what you might expect from a Fino sherry. So this is kind of like, if you get your head in the space of a wine with a little bit of touch of sherry character about it, and if you then think, I'll have that with some charcuterie, some manchego, some olives, some nuts, you are absolutely in the right space for what I had in mind for this wine. So only 50 bottles left now, so rush to the online shop now, both of you. If you could buy 25 each, that'd be great. And I would love to hear what you think. It's pretty edgy, and I'll be honest with you, I didn't know if I'd pushed it too far and giving it too much skin contact and giving it too much of a oxidative character, and I think it is going to be a bit of a Marmite wine. But I've now had enough fellow winemakers getting used to that, fellow winemakers who've tasted it, who've come down on the side of, do you know what, that's really quite interesting, and it's only been one so far. I said, do you know what, that's a bit rank. So there is an element of gamble in this, which is why I say it's not for beginners. But if you know you already like orange wines, or if you know you already like sherry, then you might want to give this a little whirl. And as I say, if nothing else, just for the rarity value of it, it comes in a little 50 centilitre bottle, so you don't even have to drink that much. And yeah, if you do buy a bottle, I'd love to hear from you and let me know what you think, and you can help guide what I do next time in the future. Take care. Thank you.